Polkadot price prediction for 2025. Why this altcoin is being mercilessly underestimated. Did you know that, according to data, Polkadot could rise to over $40 by 2025? But hardly anyone is talking about it anymore. Many crypto investors are completely overlooking DOT. Yet it could be one of the biggest opportunities in 2025. In this video, I'll break down the coin mercilessly using my 20 key metrics and my 10x formula. And at the end, I'll show you 4 different price scenarios and why $40 is more realistic than you think. Welcome to 10x by Marius, your channel for honest, data-driven altcoin analysis. Why is no one talking about Polkadot anymore? Even though this very altcoin could rise above $40 in 2025. The analysis shows that DOT is being massively underestimated, even though it's one of the most technically advanced blockchain projects on the market. That's exactly what we're going to take a detailed look at today. Data-driven, clear, and easy to understand. But first, what exactly is Polkadot? What makes Polkadot so special? Well, Polkadot isn't your typical Ethereum clone, it takes its own unique approach. It's an interoperability network that's built on various blockchains, which can then communicate with each other. Instead of being a single chain, Polkadot is basically an ecosystem with a central relay chain and individual parachains. So, a very exciting approach. What does that mean? Well, projects can launch their own chains and still be able to communicate with others. What is the technical structure of Polkadot like? Polkadot uses what's called nominated proof of stake, an energy-efficient consensus algorithm. Thanks to parachains, true scalability is achieved without compromising security, which is extremely important. And communication between the chains runs on XCM, which is its own cross-chain messaging protocol. Efficient, secure, and flexible. That's the technical foundation of DOT. Most blockchains are isolated. For example, Ethereum doesn't talk to Solana. Avalanche also doesn't talk to Bitcoin. But Polkadot solves exactly this problem through interoperability. And that's essential if Web3 is really going to scale. So, grab yourself a coffee, drop a like for me, and then let's go. But heads up, a disclaimer, my channel isn't financial advice, it's purely for information. Let's get back to market capitalization first. Polkadot is currently at about $5.5 billion US. Compared to Ethereum, which has around 300 billion, that seems small. But that's exactly the mid-cap range, where altcoins still have the biggest opportunities. DOT may not be at the very beginning anymore, but it's still far from being overvalued. So here, they're extremely well positioned, still have strong potential, but compared to low-cap altcoins, it's not as massive anymore. That's why, in this category, it's a 6. Now let's move on to the circulating supply. Polkadot has a circulating supply of 100% because all tokens are already on the market. But what's important, there's no hard cap, since DOT has an inflation rate of about 10% per year. And that of course means that new coins will continue to be created, which could put some downward pressure on the price in the long run if demand doesn't keep up. That's why, in this category, it only gets a 4. By the way, do you want to trade altcoins like DOT? Want to know where you can find them? Then check out my link below in the pinned comment. I've linked a crypto exchange there that has most altcoins and low fees. And if you sign up using my link, you'll even get a bonus. So you definitely don't want to miss out on that. And if you use my link, you'll also be supporting my channel. So thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the next point, the roadmap. So, what's the situation with the roadmap? Well, technically speaking, they're very specific and they deliver. They've already delivered in 2025, but there are still some things they want to do in 2025. But I'll get to that later. And these aren't just pipe dreams, they're actually developing live, right now. Everything is clearly documented as well. That's why I'm giving a strength rating of 9 in this area. So, what about the team? Gavin Wood, I think some of you know him, is a co-founder of Ethereum, which is obviously an advantage, and is the mastermind behind Polkadot. Alongside him, Peter Zatvan and Robert Habalaya. And this isn't just any team, they have top-notch blockchain DNA. The team, a solid 9 out of 10. Now let's move on to the narrative. What about the narrative? Which narrative does Polkadot actually serve? They want to be a key player in Web3 and, of course, in interoperability, that is, connecting different chains so they can communicate with each other. They really want to redefine the structure of how blockchains connect with each other, and the narrative here is, I think, clearly relevant and, of course, future-oriented. That's why this also gets a strong 9. Next, what problem does Polkadot actually solve? I already touched on this a bit earlier. Most blockchains don't communicate with each other. Instead, they're really just separate, isolated islands. Polkadot wants to build a bridge between all of them with the so-called relay chains and, let's say, parachains, so that they can communicate with each other. Web3, NFTs, gaming DAOs, all within an interoperable ecosystem. Here, a strong 10. Next, what about energy efficiency? DOT runs on a nominated proof of stake system, which is a very energy efficient system and much better than proof of work, for example. That, of course, makes it especially interesting for investors who value that. That's why it also gets a strong 9. Next up, which investors does DOT have? What kind of capital? DOT raised $200 million in 2017. That's already very impressive. For example, they also have capital from the Web3 Foundation, a treasury, and several developer grants. So, in the long term, they are extremely solidly positioned. That's why in this area, too, they really get a strong 9. Now let's move on to the competition analysis. Who are the competitors? Well, they do have some tough opponents. Cosmos, for example, although they haven't been strong lately, but also Avalanche and, of course, Ethereum. But what is it that Polkadot scores with now? Well, with shared security and XCM. They are extremely strong technically, and it still hasn't been decided who will win this race. But from my point of view, they are well positioned in this area, so that's why they also get a strong 8 here. Do you want to know how Polkadot stacks up against the other altcoins? Then I recommend my playlist, the 10x Universe. I've already analyzed Ethereum, I've already analyzed Cosmos, and I have a new dual format where I always pit 2 altcoins against each other. If you don't want to miss that, feel free to check out the playlist, it's in the video description. Now let's move on to marketing. How strong is Polkadot positioned in terms of marketing? They have millions of followers on Twitter, which is extremely strong. They also host events, like Polkadot Decoded, for example. They have strong developer engagement, so their marketing is extremely strong. 9. So, what about the next point? How simple is the idea behind Polkadot? Technically, it's already complex, but the basic principle of Polkadot is actually quite easy to explain. Multiple chains communicate with each other on a central relay chain. Did I explain it to you simply at the beginning? Did you understand Polkadot right away? Leave a comment. Thank you very much for that. In this area, they are definitely very well positioned. That's why it's an 8 as well. Now, on to the next point, the long-term vision of DOT. DOT wants to become the backbone of Web3, meaning with Polkadot they aim to be more flexible, scalable, and support smart contracts. The vision is clear and long-term, and they're not focused on short-term hype, but rather want to build a solid and systematic infrastructure. Here, a strong 9. Next point, are they actually deflationary? What does their tokenomics look like? DOT is not deflationary, there's no hard cap, but there is staking and governance, which somewhat dampen inflation. But still, there's no advantage like with deflationary coins, so only a 6 here. Next, fully improved market monetization. So, what does that look like? In the end, all tokens are already in circulation, but as mentioned, that's because they don't have a max cap. So, of course, more will come, but there won't be any huge surprises anymore. So, that does build trust. A strong 8. Next, what about liquidity? In other words, how easily can the token be traded? The trading volume is very high. They have a rate of 0.026, which indicates high liquidity. Good for traders, good for investors. They're really well positioned here. Next, how was the token distribution? 50% initially went to investors, 50% to the team and the foundation. They didn't really have any vesting or anything like that, it's pretty unclear. 42% of the tokens are currently staked, which is bullish because, as I'd say, they're effectively out of the market. So, a strong 9 here. Next point, what about the top coin holders? Well, the concentration is such that about 4 wallets have more than 100k DOT, and more than 60% of holders have less than 400 DOT. So, it's distributed in a very decentralized way, a solid 7 here. Then, what about the actual utility of the DOT token? DOT isn't just a coin here, it's a multi-purpose token. Staking, governance, parachain auctions, cross-chain transfers, DeFi, NFTs, and gaming. So the use case is really extremely broad. A strong 9 here. And then, what about the next point? The community, how strong is it really? DOT has a very active community. As I said, they're active on X and on many other exchanges, since they can also participate actively, of course. They host multiple events. The ecosystem really thrives on the community and less on hype. By the way, are you a DOT fan? Drop a hash DOT in the comments. A strong 9 here. Then, what about the next point? So, what news do they still have coming this year? What events? What updates? It's also extremely important that the coin remains visible in the end. In 2025, 2 big things are coming. First, in Q2, the Agile Core Time update with further scaling, and in Q3, smart contracts on the DOT hub, which is also really strong. That could change everything, especially for dApps and DeFi. That's why it's also a strong. You know, what really fascinates me about Polkadot is that the coin is ignored by many, even though, technically speaking, it outperforms about 80% of the top 100 tokens. While many projects just chase hype, DOT really delivers relentlessly and solidly. And that's often where the potential lies, or rather, the greatest potential. On my 10x ranking list, they reach 18.1%, which is a very strong value. That puts them very high up on the altcoin list. Especially when you consider that, compared to many coins, they don't even make it to 70. So, they're extremely well positioned here. Let's go over the most important points again. The favorable valuation. This is a mid-cap altcoin. The market cap is still in a solid and growth-capable range. Technically, they are extremely well positioned. Relay chains, parachains, real interoperability. They have a strong roadmap with smart contracts and elastic scaling, for example. Then, of course, the supply is good because they're no longer at such extreme risk of dumping. They have a strong community, 50% actually stake their coins. It's definitely a supported narrative, especially when it comes to interoperability. By the way, if you want to know whether I personally hold it in my portfolio, then I recommend the 10x Elite. This is a bit of self-promotion, by the way. The 10x Elite simply gives you the advantage that, on the one hand, you can see my portfolio, you know what I've invested in. Then you see my 10x watchlist. In other words, what am I currently keeping an eye on? Which altcoins? Maybe ones that others don't even have on their radar yet. Where am I investing? Where am I just observing? You get full insight. Then there's my 10x ranking list. You get full access to my 10x ranking list, where I have every altcoin I've ever analyzed. With percentage score, with rating, with a link to the YouTube video, and where you can buy the altcoin. So basically, you're fully informed. You save yourself the trouble of searching on my channel because you always have the most up-to-date info. And then there are even more benefits that the 10x Elite offers. You'll be notified early when coins come out for analysis that score over 80%. So basically, you immediately know, okay, a new analysis is out, you can quickly check it out, and you'll be informed in advance when I analyze low-cap altcoins you'll get, even before the video is published, let's say, a percentage score for the altcoin, what the altcoin is capable of, and where you can buy it. So again, you're always informed ahead of time. And I'm currently building the 10x Academy, where you can learn how to use my 10x formula to analyze data-driven analyses. That way, you'll become a bit more independent. Now let's move on to the different price scenarios. First, once again, the worst case scenario or bear case scenario. Imagine interest rates, regulations, everything is pretty uncertain. Growth really only comes slowly in that scenario. In that case, Polka remains solid, but still in the shadows. The price might just hover around $3 to $5. It's not a total loss, but it's not exactly a spectacular fireworks show either. It's, let's say, mainly because of the solid technology, but maybe it just doesn't get much attention. Let's move on to the next scenario, the base scenario. So, more like the realistic middle ground. Now, imagine this. Picture the entire crypto market growing, but not with hype, just steadily and continuously. Ethereum performs well, Bitcoin picks up, and of course, Polkadot benefits from that too. The parachains are being used, smart contracts are coming, and Web3 keeps on developing. In that case, we're already looking at price targets of $7 to $10 by the end of 2025. That's not exactly spectacular, but it's fundamentally sound and stable. Now let's move on to the optimistic scenario. What if Web3 really takes off? I'd say, especially if interoperability truly becomes the new norm and DOT becomes the backbone for it, then things get really exciting. Just imagine, what if interoperability really does become the new norm and Polkadot forms the backbone of it all? I mean, the roadmap shows that they're delivering, they're building, and more developers might start building on DOT. The narrative is catching on. We're already talking about price targets of $40. That would be a total comeback. And DOT would go from being a forgotten coin to one of the key pieces of infrastructure. But now, close your eyes for a moment. Let's fast forward to 2030. Let's imagine it's 2030. The crypto market has gone mainstream. The entire market has become a massive trillion-dollar empire, and Polkadot isn't just some regular altcoin anymore, but a central part of Web3. DeFi, gaming, artificial intelligence, everything runs on everything. And DOT could reach anywhere between $50 and $250. Sounds like a lot. Maybe, but Ethereum also started out at $3. Now that you know the potential of Polkadot, I'm also linking you to another altcoin analysis here that's really interesting. I really broke down Casper here and explained why its potential is so huge, you should definitely check it out yourself. Enjoy the video and see you in a bit.